Thank you again so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. This is amazing.
It's our pleasure.
Second one we've done here, and so.
Well, you'll make it easy, and this place is gorgeous.
Yeah, this is a gorgeous space.
Well, I'm Adam, and this is about the two of you, your journey in music, how you got to where you are now, and we'll talk about the new song. And I want to know how you guys got together as well, because my wife and I started this together, and I think that's awesome that you guys play together.
I was just saying that to your wife. It's so lovely that you guys work together. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
My best
incredible.
friend, like, it couldn't be
I know,
more
how
fun.
cool.
Yeah, when you think about this business of touring and, playing shows, and you may be gone for months at a time, and, when you have found the one, I can't imagine having to then leave for months and months at a time.
Months.
So for us to get to do this together as a team, as a duo, go out and play music together around the world is,
Pretty mad blessing.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
so cool.
it's just amazing.
Very, very cool. Well, Claire, so I read you're from Australia.
Mhm.
Whereabouts? Born and raised there?
I grew up on the Minamara River, which is Dharawal country. That's like so if you're looking at the map, it's the right-hand side.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
Down the
near,
bottom.
are you near like a big
No.
city?
No,
Oh,
like
really?
2.5, 3 hours south of Sydney.
Okay.
And
Rural town, I would
very-
imagine.
Yeah, it's a very small town. So when I came here, I was like, oh my God, there's a lot of people. I'm trying not to swear on your show. If
Oh, no,
I
you
did-
can swear. You can say whatever you
Well,
want.
I was like, holy shit, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want. Don't
Oh,
worry.
thank God. I was trying really hard last night. We played the Loretta Lynn tribute with the CMT Next Women of Country, and it was so beautiful. And I was trying really, really hard not to swear because I wasn't sure if it was going to be aired or like you don't know where it's going to go. And you don't
Yeah.
want to like mess them up or anything. And Kaylee is sitting next to me who was like, shit, fuck. I'm like, okay, cool, we're good. It's fine.
Works out. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yes, small
Okay,
towns.
okay,
Very,
small
very
town.
Small town.
And what about you, Brandon? Where are you born and raised?
I was born in Hartford, Connecticut, so
Okay.
Northeast, and went to school in Springfield, Mass, my whole life. So
Do you come from a musical household at all?
musical, and in the sense that Mom taught my sister and I to sing when we were very little,
Oh, wow.
and so we came up singing around the house and singing, oldies and gospel songs and hymns and things like that, and then. Mom put me up in front of church when I was 5 years old,
Okay.
in a white T-shirt, jeans, and rainbow suspenders, and sang my first solo. So,
Wow.
yeah, that
5.
was, yeah. I don't know where those rainbow suspenders went, but gonna have to get a pair of those.
She's probably still got
Yeah,
them.
she's probably still.
That's my mom's such a hoarder with stuff like that.
yeah, for
That's
sure.
lovely,
She keeps
though.
everything.
Yeah, they're probably bronzed somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like a monument to the rainbow suspenders.
Did you sing quite a bit in church? Was that something?
Yeah, I was a terrible athlete, so I was always picked last in gym class, and kickball was not my forte, and
Okay.
so I was never good at sports, and quite frankly, I never really cared. I wasn't gonna go like throw my body into the fray to catch a leather ball. I just wasn't gonna do it. But music was something that came naturally, and I enjoyed singing. So in school, I would be in musicals and plays and things
cool.
like that. But the church itself was a sort of a training ground for me, in singing choir and quartets and things like that.
I've interviewed a lot of musicians that come from the church. It's like you're already in front of an audience of people,
Sure.
and you're playing live
Sure.
weekly, and
Yeah.
it's such a great spot to get a lot of experience from what I hear.
Sure. Yeah, and some of the best ever. Whitney
Yeah.
Houston, cut her teeth singing in church.
Yeah.
Justin Timberlake. So it's like, it's a thing where, I don't know that I could say I caught the bug for performance in church, but it was definitely something that, being up in front of people and singing and feeling the energy off of an audience, I felt it. I learned it at a pretty young age.
That's amazing. And Claire, what about you? Did you come from a musical household at all?
I did. My grandparents on both sides were. My dad's mum was a coloratura soprano, and my mum's dad was in an Irish barbershop quartet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and both my parents, they have beautiful voices. They're not trained, and it's not what they ultimately went into.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad's got a gorgeous tenor, and they were always so encouraging. It was, for me, it was more having parents who were so supportive of me being whatever I wanted to be. And I was really sick as a kid. I had pediatric cancer, and
Yeah, I did read that. I can't. That's.
it was shit, but I'm okay.
Yeah, I can
Don't worry about
imagine.
it.
Jeez.
I'm all right. Missing a few pieces. I joked that I got hot rodded. It's kind of just anything that wasn't necessary is gone, because the cancer was everywhere, and I was given about 2 weeks to live when I was finally diagnosed. My mother had tried to talk to doctors about it, and they dismissed her and told her she was crazy. It's really common, especially with women who've had their first baby. Doctors are just like, yeah, get some sleep. You're paranoid. Calm down.
Oh,
She's got the flu, and then finally diagnosed in an emergency room. But it meant that music was kind of my window to the world.
Mm-hmm.
Music and film, really, which is where I learnt to do accents and things like that, because there's not a whole lot to do when you're stuck in a hospital bed. And my parents were just always really supportive. So once I got out of the hospital, I was classically trained for opera style, ended up in musical theatre, and then ended up in film by accident, and then ended up here. So it was kind of a wild ride.
Yeah, wow. So while you were in the hospital, that's when you were teaching yourself how to sing?
It was something that our family had always done, and it just, like, people say music heals, and it really does, because it takes you out of something. There's something to be said for creating endorphins and just making the little bits feel good that you can make feel good when you're in a really terrible situation. But it was something that always brought me joy, and I guess I did it and did it and did it, and then kept doing it after hospital. So.
How, if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you finally got out?
I think I was a day patient. So I was diagnosed at about just after my 4th birthday.
Wow,
and then
that's so young.
Yeah, it was. I mean, my childhood wasn't bad. It was just different. It wasn't
Sure.
better or worse than anyone else's. It was just different. I think when I was finally able to completely leave the hospital, I must have been about 7, because I said to my mum, if I live, can we go to Disneyland?
Oh my gosh.
I was a very blunt child, so it was like really cold in the hospital, and I overheard the doctors telling my mother that I was dying. I was like, shit, okay. In my 4-year-old brain, I probably didn't say shit. I don't know what I said, but
I would have said shit.
I mean shit. But I got out of, mum and dad came out of the room where I had overheard them talking about the fact that I had 2 weeks to live, and the only thing that would save me was this maybe experimental treatment. And it was really cold in the hospital. We came from the country. I'd never been in air conditioning. So I asked my poor mother if are there heaters in heaven, because it's really cold.
Oh my gosh.
This is the worst. And I like thinking about it now, like that's like the saddest shit in the world.
Yeah.
But she said, my parents are very strong people, and she said, you know what? They don't even need them, but you can't go there yet. All right, you got to hang on. So I did. And,
Wow. Oh my gosh. Did you make it to Disneyland?
totally fucking did. It was great.
All right. Well, Brandon, what about music as far as instruments go? Did you learn an instrument when you were younger, like piano lessons or anything like that?
So, yes, my parents dragged me kicking and screaming to piano lessons.
Okay.
And I was a nervous child, and it was a terrifying experience for me to go to piano lessons. The piano teacher lived in this creepy house up on a hill.
Of course.
Like rickety gate, the whole thing, and you had to like walk these. It was this really gnarly kind of
That's
situation.
horrific.
Yeah, it was horrific. And you'd walk in the front door, and the floorboards would creak, and I hated it. But my parents made me stick with it for a number of years, and then finally, I think I was in 8th grade, and I pleaded my case with them, and I was just like, please let me stop. And so they let me stop. I wish they had kicked my ass and said, no,
I was going to
you're
ask,
not
did you
stop.
wish that you continued
Yeah,
to do
absolutely,
it?
absolutely. I didn't know anything. I was a kid.
Right.
So I sort of have a working knowledge of how music works when you're looking at tablature, but I can't sight read. I can't sit down and play something. I can see where the notes are going, and I have some meager understanding of what's happening, but I can't sit down and play like that. Anything that I play on the piano is just simply made up, and most of the time I don't know what I'm playing. And then guitar was something that came along really late in my life.
Okay.
So I moved to Nashville in October of 2000, and when I moved here, I was sort of entertaining the idea of moving to Nashville because I wanted to do something creative. And growing up in Connecticut, it was like, well, the big city, New York, that's too close to home. Los Angeles, too far away, my mother would die.
Sure.
And somebody suggested Nashville, and I was like, I just had never even thought of it. So I came to visit, and I fell in love with the city, and the people were wonderful and kind and welcoming, and the talent level of the people here was just insane.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to move to Nashville. So I asked my parents if they'd buy me a guitar. So they bought me a $250 Yamaha acoustic guitar, and I moved to Nashville, never having written a song, not knowing how to play. And I worked for 4 years in downtown Nashville as a courier for a bunch of lawyers. So I would walk 10 or 12 miles a day, 5 days a week, delivering documents. And at night, I'd sit and close the bathroom door so I wouldn't wake the neighbors and figure out how to play guitar and write songs. And so I just kind of kept at it, and I kind of got this little handful of songs. And I used to like to hang out at this coffee shop in Hillsborough Village called Fido. Mm-hmm. And I had a friend who was a barista there. And one day I was in there having a coffee, and it was just a coffee because that's all I could afford back then. And she said, "Hey, you play music, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Well, I've been booking these opening slots at the Exit Inn. You want to come do an opening slot?" It was like in a month, and I just on a whim said yes. So yeah, I was terrified. I think I had 4 or 5 songs written, and I went and sat on a stool because my knees were knocking, and I played through my 5 songs. That was my first show in Nashville, and I think that was like 2003, probably.
Wow.
And then by 2004, late 2004, I was able to quit the courier job and piece my way through existing on music, and here I am.
Did you from that show? Like, what was kind of the next milestone? Would you say, like, did you get a publishing deal? You know how it kind of
Sure.
goes through the.
Yeah.
Did you jump through those hoops to get kind of out of the courier job?
I had started working with a couple guys in town, Drew Ramsey and Ty Smith, and they're both brilliant musicians, and they have become really dear friends. And they sort of took me under their wing and started producing some songs on me, and they had made mention to a few other friends, you should hear this guy play. And one of the friends heard it and ended up putting me on an opening slot at the Ryman Auditorium, opening for Johnny Lang. And from there, a manager saw me, and then the manager signed me, and then it was the sort of, the story of, rays of light and windows of opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those windows slammed shut, and some of them stayed open for a while. But yeah, it was quite a journey.
That's amazing. And Claire, you obviously were an actor as well. And was that what kind of started, or you started as a musician? Like, how did your career path kind of go?
I guess I started with music and acting at the same time because it's all kind of storytelling for me. And because it was in opera and musical theatre, they go in tandem, but it's a very different thing to being in television and film.
Right.
That was a total accident. I think my first film back in Australia was me learning to act on camera. Sorry. But it's funny, when I came here, I was brought out from Australia for the Nashville television show. We ran here for 6 seasons. And my mentors, I was very lucky, were T-Bone Burnett, who curated all of the music, and then Buddy Miller, who worked alongside him and ended up taking over that. And Buddy, we were at his place the other day. They've both become great friends. But we were doing the Jim and Buddy show the other day, and it's just so lovely to catch up. And it made me think, Brandon, not even knowing how, the impact that he made, back then when you were playing those rooms and unsure of where you fitted in here in Nashville. I was sitting in a recording session with Buddy for the television show, and I hadn't told anybody about Brandon, but Buddy's, I don't know, he's just wonderful, and he's one of my people, one of our people now. And I said, hey, he's like, how have you been? I'm like, I've started courting this man that I've met. He's lovely. He's a really nice boy. And Buddy's like, oh, who is he? Is he a musician? I was like, yeah, Brandon Young. And Buddy's like, Brandon. I'm like, is there anyone Brandon in Nashville? I don't know. He's like,
the only Brandon in Nashville.
He's like, Brandon Young. I'm like, yeah, how do you? And I didn't realize, like, he knew exactly who you were because you'd done the Music Moves Mountains with Emmylou, and he'd been following your music for a really long time because he saw how special you were. And it was just such a lovely thing. Like,
wow.
And it didn't matter to me if anybody knew who Brandon was. I figured that they did. But for one of my dearest friends, Buddy, to say, oh my goodness, this person, it was really cool. And when I told him, he was like, really? I'm like, yes. And now they're friends too. But yeah, it was a totally different thing coming here, learning to sing with a band. Buddy is the one who taught me how to use a microphone because I didn't know how to do it. And we're still friends, so he's a very patient man. It's weird, like when you're used to an orchestra in front of you, and the guy with the stick telling you what to do, he's not there, the band's behind you, you feel rude because you got your back to the band. And that was kind of how we met. I had my first solo show at the Bridgestone, and no pressure.
I was going to say, wait, Bridgestone?
I know. I'm like, really? And they were like, yeah, you'll be fine. I'm like, oh, great, fucking shit.
Oh, my gosh.
I was terrified. And the dude who was supposed to sing with me that night bailed 24 hours before the gig. And I was singing songs from, like, duets from the show, and then my own music that I'd started writing in the middle. My team at the time said, don't worry, we know this guy. He's got a beautiful voice, and we want you guys to write together. We'll get a hold of him. And I guess I wasn't there for the next bit, so you tell that bit.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was living in a little one-bedroom, and it wasn't even a bedroom, but it was a little loft above a two-car garage in Germantown. And I was in the middle of preparing for a 3-month tour with a guy I used to tour with. His name is John Hyatt. He's a, singer-songwriter, amazing.
Legend.
So I was working on a song, and I got a text message that said, stop what you're doing, download this song, and call me. So I did, and picked up the phone and said, hey. She said, hey, can you sing that song? I said, yeah, I can sing it. She said, can you kill it? Yeah, I can kill it. Great, I need you at the Bridgestone Arena in 24 hours to sing with my client. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, look, I'm leaving at midnight that night for a 3-month tour. Bus calls at midnight. She said, tell me you can make it happen. And I was like, okay, I will make it happen. So I rehearsed with Hyatt all day, ran home, changed my clothes, went to the Bridgestone, met her for the first time in her dressing room. We ran through the song twice in her dressing room, and then we went out and played it for a sold-out crowd.
Oh, my gosh. That was crazy. The first time you had ever met?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
He was brilliant. And I was standing by the side of the stage, and my team were off, like, doing team things, and they kind of didn't, I don't think they realized how green I was. And I wasn't socialized as a child, so I was kind of like, knew anyone. Like, exactly, that was awful, terrible. Looks great on camera, sorry. And I'm standing by the side of the stage, like, trying not to hyperventilate, because that really doesn't help when you're trying to sing. And I felt somebody behind me and heard this voice was like, and we really hadn't talked at all. We just sung through, and I had said hello and noticed that you were very attractive. And he said, hey, it was Brandon. He was like, it's going to be all right. You're going to do great, and they're going to love you. Because he knew how terrified I was because he's been there. And it was just the loveliest thing that anyone had done for me in a really long time. It was one of the first times anyone had, like, really looked at me and been like, hey, it's all right. Like, you belong. And yeah, it was just lovely. And then, of course, he gets up on stage and absolutely, like, crushes it. And I'd never had someone sing that song. It was If I Didn't Know Better, written by John Paul White and Aaron Ray. which became one of the most famous songs in the television show. And I'd never had someone sing it to me. And he walked off stage, and I finished the set, and I went down to try and find him, and was told that he had to jump on a bus to go on a tour for 3 months with John Hyatt. I was like, fuck, okay. So we kept in touch, and eventually started writing together and tried really, really hard not to fall in love, but failed miserably at it. But it's
I'm
fine.
clearly shit at being professional. 'Cause,
You were very professional. You didn't even flirt with me. If you had, I probably would have run away. So.
So you guys started writing together before you got together.
Yeah, we we were sitting at the first song that we ever wrote together. We were sitting up in Brandon's little, like, not even an apartment. It was like a studio thing.
Yeah.
And you write the song, you sit together, and you make a work tape so that your managers know that you put pants on and went to work that day, and or they assume. And we're singing, and I'm thinking, I feel funny. I'm like, and he's singing to me. I'm like, my face feels hot. What's wrong? I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't like this feeling. Maybe I'm getting a cold. I don't know. I'll just keep singing. Finish the work tape. Go home. And kept singing. I'm like, why do my legs feel weird? I'm like, my knees feel funny. I was like, what? Oh my God, do I have the flu? Like, I'm having an episode? Oh no, I'm going to do it in front of this gorgeous, beautiful angel face, beautiful. Oh shit, I like him. Oh God. And I didn't really know what butterflies felt like. I'm a very late bloomer, so I thought I was going to be sick. I'm like, so we finished the work tape, and I'm kind of like trying to hold it in. And finished it. I'm like starting to pack my stuff up into my satchel, like trying to get out of there as quick as possible. And Brandon's like, would you like to go get something to eat? I was like, no, really gotta go. It's really, really nice to see you. I need to go. And he's like, do you want a glass of wine? I was like, absolutely not. Grabbed my bag, ran out of his apartment, down the stairs, through traffic, jumped in my truck, and burst into tears because I didn't know what to do with any of the feelings that I really hadn't had before. Very late bloomer. And then, went home, gathered myself, and there was another write on the books. I'm like, I'm an adult. I can do what I want. I can write with this boy without falling in love. I can do whatever I want. It totally fucked it up. But it's fine. It worked out.
worked out.
So with those songs, because this project wasn't together, obviously, at that point.
No. This was something that Bowen Young as a duo sort of came about during the lockdown of pandemic.
Okay.
So we had, Clare had put out a solo record, and we had toured that extensively, and I had been a solo artist for a long time, and but we had got to the place where we had done countless tours together. Any show that she played, I was a part of. Any show that I played, she was a part of, and we were sitting in an outdoor, socially distant gathering.
You two weren't socially distanced. Right?
No. But our
Kidding.
manager and one of our dear friends, we were sort of sitting in this like outdoor screened thing during lockdown, and I said, "You guys ever thought about being a duo?" And it was just I don't know. There was something that just sort of clicked in where we were both like, "Yeah, we do."
It was so lovely. I'd wanted it for so long, and it just hadn't happened. And I thought everybody was in the same boat, like on the same track, trying to get us there, and they weren't. And then when it was suggested to us by Tracy Gershon and our now manager Susan Bank, they were like, "Have you ever thought about being a duo?" And I was like, "Yes, all the time. Please, are we allowed? Can we do it?" And they were like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh my God!" And it's just been the happiest thing. Like, the best. He's my best friend, and it's really cool getting to stand in the spotlight and do what we do. We're very privileged to get to do it with your person. I mean, you work with your beautiful wife, there's just nothing better than that. It's so lovely. We feel so fortunate. So Bowen Young was like, it's the thing that I'd always wanted to do because I'm a better artist with him, and I just have so much more fun out there with you. It's so good.
Yeah, it's interesting that, because you were playing together. Did you write on each other's records and everything?
Yeah.
So it was essentially it just made sense to be like, why don't we just call it, call it a group or a duo and let's do it. Like,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Interesting.
But here we are, thankfully.
Here we are.
So when it came to, you guys starting the duo, you said COVID had already happened. Were you writing a lot of songs that maybe would have been for your solo record, or Claire, it was something you were working on? And then how did it come together, and or did you start from scratch once?
It was always both. We would write separately. We would both also write for film and television. We had songs in the Nashville television show. Brandon's written for like Shameless and A Million Little Things and like a bunch of other TV things, and just writing. I think that was something that you did during the pandemic every day. He was really diligent about going into the music room and writing something every day, even if he didn't think it was the best thing. At the end of the day, it was always awesome. But that was just
sort of my way of coping with, sort of what the world was going through.
Sure.
Was, forcing myself into a space and put the guitar in my hands and make up something, And so I probably did that 5 days a week. I don't know. It was one of those things. So, coming out of lockdown, that was an exercise that I was sort of doing as self-preservation. But simultaneously, we were working on music together that would become the Bowen Young record.
Oh, okay.
It was always meant to be that. Even that very first song that we wrote, Oh Hello.
Oh, right.
Like right in the beginning.
The very first song we wrote was a song called Oh Hello.
Yeah, which is about like your true love being right under your nose, funnily enough. I rang him after we had made that work tape, and I had gathered myself and, decided that I could do whatever I wanted. I was an adult, whatever. And said, hey, I think this needs to be a duet. It's supposed to be. It just felt that that's what it was meant to be, and it was. So we've always sung it like that. And we were writing for my record at the time, so it's really always been, this is the way it's always meant to be.
Yeah. And then during the lockdown, we had our first Zoom write with a guy named Sean McConnell, who is a brilliant guy. He plays every instrument, sings like a bird, and we wrote this song with him called Water to Wine over Zoom. And Zoom writes, if you've never done one, they can be challenging because you're looking at a screen and it's like there's a lag and like the audio's not very good and you're not necessarily picking up on each other's social cues because, it's just a weird deal. But we wrote this song and we both really loved it. And Sean said, hey, why don't you come out to the studio and we'll take a swing at, recording this thing. And we spent one day with him. And when we were driving home, Claire was like, he's the guy. He's got to be the guy to make this record. Because we just hit on something special with him. And so that sort of started the ball rolling on how we went about making the Bowen Young record and writing a series of songs with him and then bringing some songs to him and letting him go through an entire Dropbox file of songs that we had written, and letting him sort of glean out of that list songs that sort of he felt like he could get a hold of and really help bring to life. And so that's sort of the process of how the record came about.
And do you have a whole album coming out, or just
We do.
EP?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're really excited.
That's really really cool.
It's a sound we'd been looking for a long time. And the only, people would always ask me, what genre is your music? Because I played a character that was a country music star, but also an Americana artist and a folk artist and wrote poetry. And she was on this really strange journey, so people associated me with Scarlett O'Connor.
Right.
And so they didn't know where I fit. And I was like, I came from musical theater, so I don't know. So the only thing I could really think to call it was cinematic Americana, because it really is a soundscape and there's so much storytelling, and that's so much the heart of Americana music. Their stories, like real human stories, and Sean just got it. It was awesome.
Yeah, the song that you guys are going to play for us, the new single, Dangerous Love, even the beginning, like the guitar tone, how it goes, it's not like a right into the vocal type song. It really kind of builds, and then you both you come in together, and it's just such a cool sound and everything. But I know that there's kind of a tragic story behind that song as well.
Thankfully, not as tragic as it could have been. Do you want to?
Yeah, I would say the long and short of it is it was almost midnight on a Sunday night, just over a year ago. We were at home. Claire was in bed, and I had just finished watching Sunday Night Football and went upstairs and got into bed. And we have a 200-pound Irish wolfhound that sleeps at the foot of our bed. And right after I got into bed, he lifted his head up and he made a peculiar sound that is unlike his sort of normal go-to sounds, you know? Like, I hear something and I don't like it. So I got out of bed and I went to the front window and I looked out, and there was an individual in front of our house. And when I came back in our room, Claire said, "Baby, there's somebody out there hunting around the truck." And I said, "I see him." So I'm pulling my Ugg boots on, and Claire gets out of bed and she says, "Phelan, come." That's our dog. So the three of us go down the stairs to our front door. And we're looking sort of out the little, like, looking glass and looking up the driveway. And it's dark. And, you know, kids come around and they check car doors and just see if there's an easy, you know, whatever. And so we've got a brass mail slot on the door. And Claire's flicking that to clang, you know, let whoever's out there, let them know there's people home.
Right.
And I just, for whatever reason, I just had this feeling I just need to go check the mid-level. And so Claire and the dog are at the front door, and I go down the stairs to go into the living room. And just as I round the turn to go into the living room, I hear the alarm system go beep, beep, beep. And I hear our kitchen door slide open. It's the back kitchen door slides open, and we hang our recycling off that door. So I hear these aluminum cans slide across the tile floor. And I just turned around and I said, "Baby, he's in the house. Get upstairs." And so the three of us ran upstairs and closed the door, locked it, and Claire called 911. And the next 11 minutes felt like 3 hours on with 911 dispatch, who were incredible. Called our neighbor, who is former Special Forces, and he came running. And, you know, our 200-pound wolfhound was somehow magically turned into 250 pounds in that 11 minutes, and was plastered to Claire's side, would not leave her side.
I think the hardest part was we were upstairs and we'd barricaded ourselves in the room and done all the things that we were supposed to do, and all we could do was kind of wait. And I'm thinking in my head, like, holding onto the dog so that, because he would eat the person or get. And unfortunately, like, I didn't want my dog to get shot through the door by whoever was in our house. I didn't want to make a noise. I just wanted him to take whatever he was there for and get out. And when you walk in through the door that he came to, you can't get around the house without seeing the music room. And there's guitars all over the walls. We're really fortunate. We've been given so many beautiful instruments by people. There's a bunch of stuff he could have taken. And I'm thinking, okay, he'll walk in, he'll see that immediately, and the next thing he'll see are the truck keys hanging by the door. And I don't care if it takes him half an hour to load up all the shit and go. Just go.
Right.
It's just stuff. I don't care. And we were listening, and he was walking around the house, just kind of very calm, methodically, slowly, and we're like, it started to feel weird. I'm like, okay, I could hear him getting close to the music room, and he stopped. And then I heard him turn and walk away from it and start up the stairs, and the only thing that up those stairs is our bedroom. And that was kind of that moment of gut clenching. Oh, he's not here for stuff. Okay, he's here for us. And so it was creepy, like slowly up the stairs. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing. There are a few rooms on the top level. He knew exactly where to go. And I was on the floor, down behind the bed, holding the dog, who was shaking, like his whole body was shaking, and his fur was sticking up on end, and he was making this noise that sounded like it was out of Lord of the Rings. And I saw the door handle turn, and I knew it was locked, but the choice that that individual made to try that door, it was just, I was like, okay, I know what you're here for. We're going to have to, and I didn't even get past that thought before the guy started throwing himself at the door. And like his actions were incredibly violent. He was doing everything he could to like assail the door open. And Brandon told him, you come in here, something really bad's going to happen. You need to not come in here. And his response was, you're going to open this door. Open the fucking door. Really calm. And then just like doing everything he could to get through. And I was on the floor thinking, like watching the door and hearing the wood start to crack. Like there's this very specific noise that happened where the door started to buckle and I could see it bowing inwards because it's like an old cheap foam core door. We have an old house. And I'm thinking like, he's going to come in and I'm going to have to do something terrible. And I don't care what I have to do because my whole world is sitting beside me. And Brandon was amazing. He didn't even shake. And I know that he was thinking the same thing. We talked about it afterwards. Like I would have done anything I had to. And we could hear the sirens. We called 911. They were wonderful. And it was this horror. One of the hardest parts was watching the door start to splinter as this guy was belting it. And the sirens were like just too far away. And I didn't think they were going to get there. But then, like a movie I was not being paid for, which is rude, the police pulled into the driveway and everything went quiet. Everything stopped. And they came in and they got the guy, dragged him out at gunpoint. He was really, really belligerent and violent. And it was just this kind of, is it over or is it? And of course, that part's over. But the part afterwards where you're left, like, you know, after the detectives and everybody had left at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're sitting there going, that really just happened, didn't it? And like somebody just tried to kill us for no reason whatsoever or none that we can find. And being confronted with that, what do I do? So we had to sit with that. And then a couple of days later, we didn't sleep for a month.
Yeah.
It's a really violating feeling, but we had each other's backs and we kind of co-piloted each other the whole time. And 2 days later, after everything had kind of sort of calmed down, we had a writing session with Sean McConnell, who we had written Water to Wine with. And Brandon said to me, we don't have to go, and which was really kind. But we decided together that we weren't going to let this piece of shit take another iota of joy from us. So we went. I hadn't really cried yet, so we pulled into Sean's driveway and I absolutely lost my mind. I don't know what triggered it, but I texted Sean. I was like, really sorry. My brain's just, it's somewhere in your front yard. I'll get it in a minute. And he was like, I can't believe you're even here. Just take your time. He's such a beautiful person. So we eventually went in once I had stopped howling, and just talked for a few hours. And because we didn't have a whole lot, threw out a couple of ideas and finally landed on something, which is the first line of the song. There are no words. And Sean said, well, what if it goes a little like this? And then within about 45 minutes, Dangerous Love was born.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Like, I was getting anxiety listening to you
It's
tell me
awful,
that
I'm
story. I
sorry.
can't even imagine. Like, that's the worst thing that you could possibly ever think about. You're at your house where you're supposed to be safe, and then somebody coming in and,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
It's the fact that he was there to hurt us. That was
Yeah,
and he
not even to
knew.
just take whatever was in the front
Yeah.
room or whatever. Like,
It was pretty sad, but we're okay. And it has become, like, since we've talked about it, my breath still catches in my throat
sure.
when I talk about it. But we've discovered we did a city winery tour around the U.S. Not like when we first sort of finished recording most of the record, and it was just an acoustic thing. So we were talking to audiences about it a little bit, and every time we talked about it, it got a little bit, tiny bit easier to talk about, and it became a vehicle for us to put something good back in the world when we're out of something dreadful, to say, like, if there's anybody out there who has something that's weighing heavily on them, that they're having trouble carrying on their own, the best thing you can do is go and talk to somebody, and it's not weak, it's a sign of strength.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I had never gone to a therapist before. I'd never sought out trauma therapy, and in this case, it was, suggested to me by some people in my life that I hold dear, Clare, my sister, my parents, that, you should go talk to somebody about this, and sort of do the work now, because these feelings and these emotions, they're not going anywhere. So you got to deal with them. And so for me, going and seeing a therapist and working through all this stuff has changed so much in my life, my mental health. And so for us, it's really important to just say, look, if you have something that you're battling with, go get help. Just go talk to somebody, because it really does help. And, I am a living, breathing example of it, because I wasn't sleeping. I was paranoid.
Oh, yeah.
And the trauma therapy has really, really helped me. So we just would encourage anybody to don't be afraid to get help.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's so heavy. I cannot even imagine what you guys went through.
We're okay.
But to be able to write a song within a couple of days later too, was there any therapeutic release from that at all, or not really? Or
There's definitely. I mean, I was so angry that somebody would. I've had my life threatened before. It sucks.
Oh my
I've dealt with that. They've dealt with that. But having Brandon's life threatened, I was so white-hot furious that I could barely see straight. And so to be able to put those feelings into words, into something that could, to be able to express it, and then after the fact that might be able to help people. I always try to, like, when something bad happens, I try to do something good to counter it. And it has become a vehicle for that. It was really good to be able to sing it and not feel bad about any of the feelings that I had towards that person. I don't feel bad about it at all. Used to feel really guilty about, being angry at people. Now I don't. It's a normal thing that happens when somebody tries to kill your husband.
Sure.
And that's the thing that the therapist helps you walk through, and sort of identify those things. It's like, you know what? It's okay to feel that way. It's okay to go through and sort of, walk down that dark path and feel everything that you need to feel so that you can deal with it. Because if you don't, as my sister says, those awful feelings will go down in the basement, they will lift weights, and they will come back 10 years later much stronger than they were when they went down.
For sure.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, again, I appreciate you guys, sharing that with me, and I can't even imagine. And thank you for doing this today. Like, this has been
thanks for
so
having us.
amazing.
Yeah, it's so nice to be here.
Really, really appreciate it. I know you haven't. Do you have a release date on the album yet, or?
Not yet. We're just waiting on a couple of things to sort of like materialize, fall into place. Maybe there's a couple more songs that we need to write, but it's there, and we're so excited.
That's so cool. And then you have you're playing the Bluebird Cafe. Is that what I saw?
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we're playing December 29th.
Yep.
So,
wow.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you again for doing this. I really, really appreciate it. I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
I want to know if both of you have any advice for aspiring artists.
Oh gosh.
My advice, I think, from now until the end of time will be don't quit. Just don't quit.
Yeah.
A lot of times, no, not a lot of times, I would say 99.9% of the time, the work comes first and the inspiration comes second. So do the work and don't quit. And if you don't quit, eventually the inspiration will show up.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
I think for me, I said it last night when we were doing the Loretta Lynn tribute. One of the things I loved about her was that she was this, larger than life person, but still, she was always the coal miner's daughter, truly. And it just reinforced what I've always believed, that you need to remember where you came from and remember why you started. That's what will remind you why you started. And there's a humility that one must keep about themselves at all times, especially in very privileged situations, and we're very privileged that we get to sit here with you and sing our songs and have people listen and tell stories. So I will always be the girl from the Minamata River.
Thank you both again so much.
Thank you.
I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.